Yeah, we complete.
Okay, Atma B.
Complete.
Okay, Sadar A.
Complete.
In favor of Mississippi's ban on abortion after 15 weeks. That is the Roe versus Wade ruling. In doing so, it has effectively ended the constitutional right to an abortion. Individual states are now able to ban the procedure again. Half of the states in the US are expected to introduce new restrictions or bans. 13 have already passed laws that will automatically outlaw abortion following the Supreme Court's ruling. A number of others are likely to pass new restriction quickly. So yeah, if you have any questions regarding the info slide, feel free to ask me or Kadea in the WhatsApp group. Right now, I'm giving you guys 10 seconds to take a screenshot or take notes or anything in regards to this info slides. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. The motion for the grand final round reads: as feminists in the US individual state, this House will prioritize campaigning for the state's less strict exception of anti abortion law as opposed to campaigning against the Supreme Court's ruling on Roe versus Wade. Once again, any question, feel free to address it in the WhatsApp group. Right now, the time is. Wait, mana HP? Okay, the time right now is. Okay, wait, sorry guys. Oh, 1:27 p.m. That means 27 tambah 15. Wait, hold on. Okay, so we're going to start at 1:42 ya. Okay, 1:42 siang WIB. Okay, so yeah, for the committee, please provide 4 breakout rooms for each teams, I guess. So yeah, we're going to have our grand final here. So yeah, best of luck for all grand finalists. Have a very, very great debate.
Hi guys. So the time is up. Um, before starting, can I ask for all teams? Do you guys have a consent to be recorded and live streamed for the finals? Maybe you can start with opening government.
PM doesn't consent.
PM does not consent. DPM.
DPM consent.
DPM consent. LO, OO consent. CO consent. And CG.
Member consent.
Consent.
Member consent. I assume that's the whip.
Yeah, whip consent.
Right. So the whips also consent. So the only one that doesn't consent is the Prime Minister. For the organizing community, please take note so to not record or live stream the Prime Minister for their speech. Okay, so while we wait for the LO to Fahri from ITB, the motions for the grand final is as
Hi, just checking if I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. My player preference is just unmuting. Guys, I will not see the Zoom at all. Please address me, she or her. Taking a couple seconds for deep breaths. Sorry. Okay. Three, two, one. As a woman in law, I am extremely disappointed by Supreme Court's ruling. I'm going to explain to you the urgency on why this discriminative ruling passing is so bad to women in the US. Because the legal system like the US, it's common law, right? And therefore, a case like this is very, very important because in US, it works based on jurisprudence. Just like how the previous landmark case has provided the rights of abortion for all women in US, it has so much legal power. This overturning of ruling means two things. First, not only because it's from the Supreme Court, meaning that it will be favored as a legal basis over municipal court's ruling, any state's ruling. That is how powerful it is. But second one, we think because this is the most recent one, it'll be considered the most relevant and would be strongest legal basis over every single other previous cases or whatever, except for the Constitution. Which is why it's very, very dangerous when you still want to have this particular ruling not overturned, right? Because whenever you go into a conflict, you cannot have the protection of the law wherever you are in the United States if you are a woman. Note that our model will focus on us as feminist movement, noticing that our resources are limited. That's why we need the solution with the most feasible outcome. We will focus our resources to overturning this discriminative ruling, and note that Supreme Court's ruling can be overturned, right? So what we want to do is we want to propose the most recent ruling to be re-evaluated, either through like cassation or like other judicial means, and like the lawyers can take care of that, right? We can have a class action lawsuit and whatever, and that's still going to be very powerful and very clear in mechanism, right? But before that, one clarification before my arguments. This motion is not an angry feminist motion, right? Whatever arguments coming from opening government about us being radical and angry feminists, it's not necessarily aggressive. Yes, it's nationwide, but it's different from status quo, right? Because whatever campaign we do, we can still strategize it into something something that is not as radical as you think, right? So our model still sticks the same, ruling to be reevaluated. Arguments then. First, on principle, why it is within the interest of feminist movement. Why? Because we cannot allow the rights of basic bodily autonomy of these women to be placed in the very volatile hands of the states, right? We think it's most protected if it's protected by Constitution or an interpretation of the Constitution, which is the Supreme Court ruling. This is more stable. Why? Because when the law recognizes a woman as a person, right, they give the woman a right to say that she belongs to herself. Meaning, this woman would have a safe recourse if she becomes pregnant as a result of, even in the worst case scenario, of this woman being raped, right? It means that doctors will no longer need to deny treatment to this woman with whenever they have a serious condition like cancer, heart disease, or whatever, and they don't need to worry about the law. They can just make the decision for the woman's best interest based on purely medical reasoning. So you don't have to, whenever you are in a very conservative state and you need abortion, you don't have to already suffer with this medical condition and also having to think about going to court, going against the state, right? That is how harmful it can be for the woman. Now we want explaining why. Why then, when you put this decision to the hands of the state, it's so bad. Why? Because when it's per state, you're only campaigning for the state to pass protective laws. It's basically politics, right? Why is it less likelihood to succeed then? When you notice that in these states, especially conservative states, the people in power are already very, very discriminative, right? That's why, as a feminist movement per state, you have a little you have less resources, less people campaigning against this very very powerful person in the state, it's less likely to happen. Or less likely to happen because in those states women are already silenced either out of fear or shame, because they fear that they will lose their jobs, they fear judgment from the general public, and other platforms are not accessible, or they already systematically disenfranchise the woman in those particular states, right? Feminist movement has become the only organization where these women can express and have the resources as well. That's why it's very very important for feminists not only to fight in the states but nationwide, right? Because they will have channels to other feminist movements in other states that's more powerful, and then they can help them, right? That's why they need to. It's more strategic to have nationwide campaign. But second of all, why is it then? Why is it that nationwide is very very powerful, right? We think with more allies, more numbers, and more media traction, it helps in three ways, right? First, power in numbers, especially for allies, right? When allies voting for bills, when you have lots and lots of people, you make it look like it's more important than just very small groups fighting in each small states, right? When you gather together and you make it feel like it's big, more likely that media traction will go and cover you. But second of all, we think with different perspectives from different states, it's better to be able to call out any values that is not okay for women when necessary. But third of all, it also helps with dissemination of discussion. So you're not only trapped in the echo chamber of your own state that's very, very harmful if you are in a conservative state. Now let's talk about the worst case scenario. Best case scenario that will happen in government, right? Best case scenario that will happen in government is fine. Your own state, for example, you're living in a progressive state, you succeed, right? But only your at least one state succeed. That means that only privileged people can travel from other states to go get abortion at your state. This is very very harmful for women who are less privileged. For example, they don't have enough money to travel to other states, whereas they are really really in need of abortion, right? That's so bad to them. But worst of all, when you campaign for these laws, you're still going to have a very long process, right? It's basically the same with judiciary, but the difference is on our side, when it's judiciary versus you fight in legislative and you fight for lobbying for laws in each state. For judiciary, it's more tetap, right? Because it's nationwide. But in when you fight about politics, you don't know what can happen. Anything can go wrong, and that's bad.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now to continue the case of Korean government, we call upon Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Right, perfect. PI preference to chat. If I have time, preferably going to take one from closing opposition for the sake of cross-bench engagement. So yeah, going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, first thing that you need to note is what is very important to speak about in this motion in this grand final. What's important for you as an individual feminist is that you need to maintain your position. You need to be able to, for example, maintain feminist movement as a movement that can still operate in the future, while also still maintaining the integral rights that you have right now. For example, the rights for you to have for you to live at the end of the day. This is why our mechanisms at the end of the day still make sense. Because at the end, when we campaign for less strict exception, it doesn't mean that we concede to all those kind of pro-life movement significantly. But we still, for example, try to campaign to reason why impartial abortion should still exist, because there's a particular medical reason, and I believe this is the moderate reason that everyone could not dispute at the end of the day. This is the reason why your integral rights as a woman will still be maintained on our side of the aisle, unlike what opposition try to frame to you. But it's very unfortunate how opening opposition do not want to engage to any of our case and bring a very wishy-washy case. Why? Because opening opposition knows that our capability as a movement is very limited. That, for example, all the politicians in all those kind of parliament are very skewed and are very conservative to begin with. It means that you cannot be greedy on this kind of situation to begin with. Furthermore, no proof from their side of the house to why they have such a big of a bargaining power to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. It proves to you that even on their side of the house, they could not prove to us to why this proposal have any kind of efficacy at the very first place, because people's voice would not simply rule all those kind of judicial orders to begin with. Let's see how yours would want to overthrow all those kind of judicial order. I do not see any kind of efficacy from that. We need that explanation in the DLO. Two things that I'm going to talk about in my speech. Number one, I'm going to talk about the longevity of feminist movement. Secondly, I'm going to talk about how it will be easier for you feminist movement to forward their agenda regarding abortion when the moment that you try to do this particular policy on our side of that. So let's talk about the first thing, the longevity of feminist movement. Let's talk about the parameter of having longevity. Three things. Number one, you still have a movement, still have a follower. Secondly, you are still being able to, for example, allow your operational campaign and whatsoever by the government in the future. Thirdly, if they are still an issue that's very relevant to you, not a purely black and white issue that people already considered in to begin with. This is the reason why longevity exists under our side of the house. Because when the moment you do not go against those kind of Supreme Court law, which is absolute, like what opening opposition say, but we bargain on, for example, the clauses inside of it, it means that at the end of the day, those kind of movement are not going to be associated as criminal. This is the reason why, because at the end of the day, bargaining inside of the clauses of the law is already something that is very normal, that existing in the current status quo to begin with. The reason why their movement on their side of those will be associated with criminal, even though they do not do, for example, something that's too radical, because it's a portrayal that comes from white supremacists and right-wing movement that would like to overthrow and sabotage this particular feminist movement. This is why they could frame you on how that this feminist movement are the one that is particularly opposing the law that's been passed by the country. This is how you get framed as a criminal at the end of the day. At the end of the day, what would happen is that when movement are associated as a criminal, it means that people would not have any willingness to support you at the end of the day. This is why all the engagement from them regarding lawyers, regarding the number of people on the ground would not exist either way, because now people are too afraid to support you because they do not want to be criminalized. But secondly, not going against the law under our side of the house means that you are being still able to campaign to your future. It means that you can still be able to take baby steps in changing all those kind of policy to begin with, because there's still a centrist politician that you can adhere to, unlike the portrayal of their side of those where everything is just a freaking Republican, ladies and gentlemen. But secondly, what would happen under our side of the house is that this issue still have a huge controversy to begin with. For example, on how that this kind of abortion, there's a state, for example, that completely ban abortion, and there's state that give us ban of abortion, for example, with the restriction itself. It means that the discussion with whether or not abortion still allowed will still be accessed and alive either way under our side of the house. So why this is particularly important to ensure the longevity? Because you are the last line of your defense for the most vulnerable women at the end of the day. It means when the moment that you, as an individual, you are benefited from this feminist movement, not only from the abortion counterpart, but also many other rights. For example, the rights for you to work, the rights for you to get those kind of education. It means that when the moment that those kind of movement is gone, it's easier for example, a more radical Supreme Court to simply overthrow this kind of thing and make it a popular policy when the moment feminist movement is not there to give a counter narrative to begin with. This is the reason why longevity is very important. No engagement from their side of the house. This is what takes opening government into forward and opening opposition. But before moving on, Justin.
With your logic, that LGBT individual who protest for gay marriage can be considered as criminals?
I do not see why suddenly gay marriage would be considered as criminal to begin with, because the protest that exists, for example, by LGBT movement is also using, for example, constitutional rights, for example, the rights for them to have those particular to have particular chosen to begin with. Too, I do not see why this is correlated anyway in this debate. So let's move on. Second thing, regarding how it will be easier for you to forward feminist agenda of abortion in the future. Because we explained to you on how that our position is very thin ice in abortion sector itself. It means that when the moment when we fell overthrowing the Supreme Court ruling, it means that you are going to be seen as a movement that's radical, as a movement that's opposing constitutional law that will label as criminal. What are the outcomes? Two things. Number one, you could no longer forward your agenda. Your organization activity will be halt at the end of the day. Secondly, secondly, Supreme Court could also pass a law that is even worse. Now they will not allow any kind of restriction because they feel attacked and feel aggressivity from your side of the house. Why is that? Number one, it's going to harm the legacy of women that already sacrificed their deeds and dignity to make this kind of progress. They're appreciated because there is an NCAP project that's still standing in the current status quo. When you remove that, it means that you are removing also the legacy of women, also the proof of the women are so capable of doing things. You are regressing all the progress that exists in the current status quo. You cannot be rash. Secondly, you are also losing a follower, and it's very important for you as an individual because you also want your movement to also grow. But it's the comparison under outside of the house. There's a better chance for you to succeed at the end of the day. Number one, because this is a legal way. Secondly, you are being seen as someone that would like to do compromises. But thirdly, you will not be seen as someone radical because now you have the ability to, for example, sway centrist politician to begin with. This is very important in order for women to acquire all those kind of important basic dignity and basic rights to begin with that they do not have under the side of the house. But even if we fail, at least on our side of the house, the discussion between abortion is still there, and you can still spark it up in the future. And this is what makes it important because there is a slight change in the government. You have the time for you to forward those kind of things. Very proud to propose.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now to continue the case of opening opposition, we call upon Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Okay, am I clearly audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. Yeah, preferred gender pronouns are he, him. I consent to be recorded in any way, shape, or form. My POI preference is just via unmuting yourself verbally. I'll take one, preferably from closing at around minute, maybe 4 or 5. If closing doesn't want to POI, I'll give one to opening. Yeah, before I start my speech, I just want to issue a very quick trigger warning. I know that we've been talking about some very sensitive issues in this motion. And even though, yes, I'm a male, but I really don't want to offend any parties in this debate. Everything I say is fully for the purposes of this debate. Right, before, yeah, okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, right. I think we can quickly kick out OG from this debate even before CG talk about anything, right? Because it's simple. I think they're very discriminative, and I think they've been very dismissive towards every single argument that Bella has brought. 2 arguments that Bella has brought about, first, principal right of women to bodily autonomy, on how you cannot leave it to volatile states' opinion and stance. I think that that's something that is clearly unrebutted as well. Second, dissemination of discussion and echo chambers is something that is still unrebutted in opening government, right? So because of that, OO still stands firm this debate. Immediately moving on to engagements, right? I have one independent rebuttal that I'd like to make towards their case, right? First off, the main thing that they talk about is legal power, right? They basically say that if there is something to dispute, it will be easier to dispute it on a state level. 3 responses to this. First off, I think OG are trapped in their California dreams where all states will submit and are exactly like blue and liberal states here. But we think that that's not going to happen, panel. We think that maybe at best case scenario, and this is being very charitable, states are going to have partial legalizations when they are liberal, when they are Democrat, when they actually, when the political party that rules over that state, agrees with it, right? But then states like Texas in the US are extremely conservative, read in every single election that's happened over the past 50 years or something. They won't listen, panel. That is the biggest problem here. Second response, and this is why Bella's point becomes all the more important to engage in. You cannot leave something as crucial as the absolute right for women for bodily autonomy to be decided by something as volatile as the state's ideology. This becomes important in the US because not all states are constant in their views. Not all states are like California of constantly blue or constantly red like Texas. Swing states exist, which means every few years that stance is going to change. It. We don't want that to happen. We want that to return to the Constitution when it is the absolute right defended by the government, right? Which leads me to the third response, answering BPM's burden on efficacy of judicial order. This is something that Bella's already explained about, but I can explain this further, right? It's simple. You can have better transparency. It comes in the form of like live streaming of trials versus the comparative on OG side of the house, backdoor negotiations on states in your side of the house. You have no idea what's going on. You cannot change them either. The result on opposition and the likelihood analysis, which is something OG does not answer, by the way, becomes more bargaining power. These kinds of live streaming can actually help the feminist movement to win, right? Why? More public pressure. This is a democracy, ladies and gentlemen. Public pressure and public opinion matters very much. We can know if the Supreme Court gives another discriminative ruling because people knows if Supreme Court does not give good reasoning. Check and balance is what is exclusive on opening opposition. That does not exist on OG side of the house. Because of that, their case has automatically fallen. Moving on to the extension, I'll engage more on their very, very discriminative, angry feminist ideology, I think, but on two layers, right? First, likelihood of gaining allies, extending on the rebuttal, and second, we're going to also give the worst case scenario analysis on the individual actor's likelihood of reaction to this ruling, right? So first layer, likelihood of gaining allies. Let's compare government and opposition. When realistically this becomes something that is individualized by each state, I think it's much more simple. It's very safe to assume that the numbers in each state are going to be less compared to if all states, all feminists in all states actually come together, ban, and unite to fight against the Supreme Court, right? So what is exclusive on opposition is higher in numbers that makes an urgency clear, right? It's simple. When the US is a democracy, at the end of the day, if enough women are talking about that, the government will listen, and most likely, when the numbers are huge, men will likely listen as well. Why? Because we're straight males, right? Men are scared when numbers are huge. Our egos are very fragile. Most likely, that the rational calculus of men in the United States, a good portion of them will actually fight for women as well because of the amount of numbers that are, right? So we think that your point on people being scared to be criminalized, etc., is not going to happen when you have those strength in numbers. A very good portion of men will also follow and support their female allies, right? So we think that on point of longevity as well, we think that it's likely to last longer as well, simply because there are more allies to support it, right? I think the analysis doesn't have to be that complex on government side of the house, right? We think that the comparative is much better when we have a clearer urgency. The Supreme Court is likely to overrule that because of our urgency and because of our numbers. That is also going to lead to much better longevity compared to on government side of the house, right? But second layer, we're going to be talking about the actor analysis. Before I go on, is there something from closing?
Okay,
Yes.
so you can attract or make the government believe in you, but you need to notice that in order to pass this policy, you need to pass the jury in Texas, Missouri, that most of the juries are conservative. How then the peer pressure will work on that?
Because we're talking about the Supreme Court here on opening opposition, when we're talking about the Supreme Court, this becomes a discussion that happens on the highest level of government, not the individual states, right? So this becomes a burden on CG actually to prove to us how the very conservative jury on Texas, on Missouri, etc., are actually going to be convinced to allow these less strict exceptions, right? That is what is exclusive on opening opposition, likelihood of success, right? But moving on, last layer of worst case scenario, right? What if the fight A isn't successful or B takes a very long time? We think that at the very least, you make the urgency clear, you make your voice heard. This gives hope to every single woman on the individual level who actually want to get abortions, right? Why is this so powerful? Because women do not want to get abortions. Women who want to get abortions have their own reasons for doing so. Pregnancy can be a very traumatizing thing if it's unwanted, regardless of the reason. Even if it's something that is, for example, accidental, you cannot invalidate the feelings of women who don't have that quote unquote strong reason on government for wanting that abortion. And as the feminist movement, this becomes our ultimate interest to fight for all women. women. Even historically, at the start of Roe v. Wade, Jane Roe, which I think is the law code name, had an unwanted pregnancy, right? She didn't have all of those exceptions, which at the time probably would have allowed her to get an abortion in her state. But we think that at the end of the day, these kinds of rights, these kinds of hope that you would give to every single woman who wants an abortion becomes the last safety net that we as opening opposition want to prioritize. We fight for the rights of all women all over the United States. Proud to speak in the grand finals.
Right, thank you for that speech. Now to open the case of closing government, call upon the member of government. Here.
Okay, check. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, cool. Wait. First thing first, gender preferred pronouns they or them, he, him. Secondly, what else I want to say? Oh, POI preference through chat, but I will definitely offer POI before 6. And lastly, I think, yeah, this is a very big moment for me and Jeremy because we've only been in grand finals for 3 times because we always lose in semifinals. So I will just have fun and bring whatever I could bring. And thank you so much everyone for having me here and love you all. So starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. 2 things I will do in my speech. Number 1 is to map what happened in opening debate, and number 2 is to explain and technically my contribution in CG. So there are 2 framings and 2 issues that I will talk about in regarding opening debate. Number 1, I think there is a deadlock in efficacy between OG and OO, which OG championed the image of feminists with this strategy, but OO championed the principle of abortion right without any analysis of feasibility of their proposal. This exactly requires more context as to how US politics operate to begin with. So CG is taking over because no one is technically talking about how court runs. Oh yeah, I appreciate Vinay for talking about that. Good for you. Because we think number 1, we think image is not the most important case here. And secondly, principles aren't the only case here. How could we protect women who needs abortion? What kind of law can we pass the best and ASAP? Don't be halu, don't be too image centric, care about women, that's feminist. But number 2, I think OG puts too much focus on how feminists will be hated. That's not factual because many conservative feminists, there are a lot of conservative feminists too, but that is fine. In fact, OG ended up forgetting the most important explanation, which is how to pass the bill and law in the court. So the image here becomes less important in that sense. CG, who watched too many court documentaries and crime dramas, will take over with my limited knowledge. So that's technically how I talk about the opening debate. Now let's move on to my contribution. So in my contribution, technically I will talk about how the court actually operates and what kind of field we're actually talking about here. But number 2, I will also explain to you how then in the end of the day, we will attract these individuals to appeal for us, right? Now, first thing first, context. I think as feminists, we obviously want to pass the right for full abortion to be legalized, like what O said. But no matter how old, the womb is, or even when it's more than 15 weeks, we still want to pass it. But that's a lot of effort to pass. How so? There are 3 contexts and 3 analysis that was missed in the opening debate about U.S. politics. Number 1, the fact that Roe v. Wade has been passed shows the support from the society regarding anti-abortion. How so? OO can just say that people in the US are progressive. Look at how this bill passed, meaning that the majority of juries, not judges, juries are normal citizens who voted for a law to pass that usually represents many spectrum of community. It shows that they have the vote for normal citizen regarding anti-abortion law. Also, this is responding to OO. Notice how the Supreme Court case has been passed. This is a debate as to how which state make their abortion law, which leads into how we could appeal into the juries in each state. Because as you want to note that the current status quo is that each states in the U.S. wanted to make their own anti-abortion law and abortion law in that sense. That is exactly why how then we appeal to these particular juries. So second context then. I think it is hard to change the mindset of the citizen and the mindset and the society, right? Look, no matter how conservative or progressive you are, many of the U.S. population are evangelical Christians or maybe POC with less education, for instance, or those people who are still lives upon their traditional value like the Chinese in the Chinatown and whatnot, with all those traditional and religious mindset, it will be very hard for them to change their vote, especially knowing that they have this belief that abortion is equal to human execution in that particular sense. But the third context then, more than that, the state has demanded that each region should carve their own abortion law. Now, let's see the majority of Senate or politicians from each state. In terms of power, so many Republicans are dominating the parliament in each state. Yes, the Conservative Party. The voice for Biden and Democrats are usually saturated in more progressive, such as New York, California, and whatnot. Those the progressive states that women does not even need abortion because they're woke enough to with sexuality, for instance, or maybe the bill will pass easily there. So I don't necessarily need to talk about these particular progressive states. But big places like Texas, Missouri, or Alabama are full of white evangelical Christian farmer that usually the one who conducts sexual harassment with high level of patriarchy, yet they are the one who bans abortion. I'm sorry, forgot the trigger warning, but yeah, that's my speech. This is the place where women actually needs abortion and needs protection the most. The place that is highly patriarchal and dominated by white male Republican politicians and those white male farmer like what you see in porn usually. Now, for context then, I think if you want to say that we will appeal to government like Biden and whatnot, number one, we might able to appeal to the Democrats, but you need to also notice that Biden is so damn weak because he's seen as indecisive, knowing that even this policy does pass. He's also trying to please the conservative to begin with, right? So the indecisiveness of Biden is questionable in that sense. I don't understand how OO wants to champion like yeah, the politicians or the government will listen to us just because we are creating peer pressures. If we are creating peer pressures since 1940, the abortion law will already exist because exactly women has been campaigning for feminism since then. But the fact that peer pressure does not work up until now, there is certain strategy that we need to go through. But before that, Fioi.
Opening, how will minorities be protected on your side then when there's no dissemination of discussion because each state will fight for their own, right?
Okay, I think under the case that you want to fight for minority and stuff like that, it's not necessarily the framework that I think is strategic for this debate. Because technically, when we're talking about feminists as a whole, as a woman as a whole, we're talking about what kind of abortion law will exist, right? So I don't necessarily think OO have a best strategy to just like put this particular debate into how minority will be protected. Because in the end of the day, and when we're talking about women, it's protection for women in general, and it's for all women, no matter who you are. I think that's the concept of feminism. So yeah, it's there in my speech. So now let's move on. Knowing the most important places that needs women protection are those middle states that are full of Republicans, how to pass the bills. Number one, do not appeal to the judges or the government, but appeal to the juries instead. All the jurors are normal people in legal age. They're taken from many layers of society in order to cast their vote. What kind of story will we bring in the courtroom than to make the vote for us? We're talking about less painful abortion, less strict abortion ban. Bring a story about a harassment victim. Every mother who sits in the jury chair will relate. Bring a story about pain of bearing a child. Every woman will relate. Bring a story about how hard could it be to live as a POC or even as a poor man with unwanted child. Everyone will relate. But tell them to fully abort the baby, they will hate you. That's the form of less strict rules we're asking for. But number two, another form of story we can appeal is the story of clueless young girl who illegally abort their baby, told the jury to imagine that their daughter made that illegal decision to abort, tell them to reduce the punishment for illegal abortion, which will becomes the most likely option after Roe v. Wade pass anyway, right? Hence, women have better safety when they want to silently abort their baby. You need to notice, screw the idea of principles. When we are lowering the punishment or at least making less strict rules towards abortion, for instance, this is exactly why, and this is exactly where actually feminists can assist those pregnant women who are being discriminated by law. When the punishment is reduced, then feminists can maybe from imprisoning women who abort their baby, then making it into like giving only fine, then it's basically feminists can assist them by giving these particular women a donation, for instance. So in the end of the day, although yes, we are not campaigning for full abortion, a full abortion, right? But in the end of the day, we are campaigning for at least a punishment that we can still assist as feminists and we can still assist this particular woman, and that's enough as feminism. That's more realistic, proud to be CG. CG kan? Oh ya benar.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now to open the case of closing opposition, we call upon the member of opposition. Here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Awesome. PI through chat, taking one from opening or closing. Yeah, anyone for engagement. Yeah, a bit of trigger warning as well. Don't mean to offend anyone purely for the purpose of this debate. Uh, Starting in 3, 2, 1. 2 points of framing, and it's really unfortunate that CEO has to be the first thing to bring this. 1. Demanding appeal and cassation before the Supreme Court at the event of examining a ruling is a constitutional right. This is talking about questioning the legitimacy of the case law in this specific ruling at the nexus of abortion criminalization, right? I don't think this is something criminal to begin with. Radical, sure, but feminists in both sides will just be exercising their like constitutional right to appeal in adverse and equally radical way. That's why my POI to JPG was super important, because if it's true that demonstration means criminal charges, the LGBT community would have been jailed for asking their rights of choices. Like right now, they're not. So OG is out. CG is also out, by the way, because cassation in Supreme Court, like unlike popular belief, does not include juries. The judges were the ones who vote because it's a matter of overruling a particular law, not just a basic trial of pickpocketing or whatever. This kick off CG and their mischaracterization of how court works. But even also assuming this false context, understand that this urgency of what evangelical whatsoever actually dug their own grave, because if it's true that people who represent the political climate are that conservative, you're practically hopeless anyway, trying to find better ruling in your particular state. At best, their argument is case by case, which does not explain why suddenly people would sympathize with single parent with a kid whatsoever, right? If it's true that people are that conservative, most likely people would not sympathize no matter what their situation is, right? Because they think that you're morally wrong to begin with. So your extension is going to be really simple. Likelihood and feasibility for change. I find it like quite unfortunate that OO, even with all their benefit principles, have failed to explain why this is likely to be successful to begin with. So CEO is going to complete that burden in 3 points of analysis. The first thing I want to talk about was the fact that the ruling to overturn Roe v. Wade was a split of 5-4 between the chief judges. What does this mean? This means that you don't need to change all 5 conservative judges to make a unanimous decision to allow free abortion. This just means you need to shift one of them, and abortion once more is a constitutional right. This is a very important explanation because this shifts your perspective from whatever Gov wants to tell you and however they want to manipulate you to thinking that it's super difficult, super bureaucratic, super impossible to change, because you only need to change the perception of one person. But it is also talking about some judges, for example, right? Namely Chief Justice John Roberts, for example, who was a conservative, but he was seen to be more leaning to progressive policies, and he can be considered as a swing voter, right? He is more likely to sympathize in our side, understanding the massive backlash happening after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, or at least he will be pissed off seeing a lot of concessions, giving them all those kinds of headaches, needing to confer in judges' deliberation regarding abortion every single week. This is true and factual, understanding that these thoughts, even to the extent of gay marriage, for example, were found by Supreme Court as legal. This is also true, understanding that the Supreme Court will adapt to the social demand through evolution of the law, right? Therefore, shifting the perception, or making one person turn from their decision is not something that is so complicated. I think we like mechanizing, probably the campaign would look like, like giving all out and out attorneys, for example, trying to argue on why this probably is something good and why like banning abortion and rights to free choice, for example, is probably something bad. This is important because it answers the burden on why Supreme Court is likely to change, while just separately we can claim the benefit. But the second point of likelihood is that making legal argumentations in court as to why abortion fulfills the constitutional rights to life and choice and bodily autonomy is much more feasible to make an actual change compared to making a discourse with conservative governors or senators who passes the bill in their own state. We're talking about governors who are religiously indoctrinated. They are very consistent in defending God law, which bans abortion. We can compare these irrational individuals who are likely to be irrational anyway, given their subconscious bias on what they think is right, compared to the chief judges sitting in the Supreme Court who spend their entire lives reading and dealing stuff related to Roe v. Wade or other forms of ruling or other forms like case law and jurisprudence, right? That's why making legal arguments and pulling some strings to relate to the First Amendment rights of choice and bodily autonomy is more feasible to happen under closing opposition. Especially, you need to understand that judges are different with politicians. Judges do not look for vote. They're not democratically elected. They don't need to pander to any community. They think of what they consider to be right, and they would vote for what they think is right. The label progressive and conservative Supreme Court judges only came from the president who packed the court with their asses, right? It doesn't necessarily establish what they will stand for and where they stand from a particular issue. What is the factual and tangible comparative? You don't see any progress with gun control regulation, no matter how much schools have been shot, no matter how much children, for example, have been innocently killed by gun. Even from what I read last, the Republican lead negotiator walked out of the discussion because they just couldn't cooperate with the Democrats. This is why relying on the politics is bad. Relying on the law and what has been written in the Constitution, on the other hand, is good. This is a very important analysis because we don't rely on whether or not they are red or blue. We don't rely on whether or not they're good or bad. We have the basis to argue why democratic politics are bad exclusively for rulings as impactful as this one. This is also even true because in order to determine their decision, the judges need to confer with experts with legal opinions who are likely to shift to the progressiveness if the feminist movement in separate states, for example, file I don't know, lawsuit, for example, trying to overturn the particular ruling of Roe v. Wade. On the comparative, politicians do not think legal basis whatsoever. They do whatever the hell they think is right, thinking that their freaking homelander, for example, they pander to only the majority, for example, in Texas or Missouri or whatever the state. They think that the voice of these people are giving them the vote. That's why they will pander to this community. I'm gonna take a point. 3.
Yeah, OG.
Yeah, go ahead.
The fact that the post-progressive judge still voted against those kind of abortion law, it means that the consultant to the experts and all those kind of things that you talk about also do not work. So what is the efficacy under your side of the house?
At worst, one of the judges will eventually be pissed off, I think, by a lot of feminists filing these particular suits like every single day. But even if not, for example, I think if the ruling is overturned, for example, I think the judges would, the primary purpose of the law is to maintain social, security as well, preventing social tension. And given that the conservatives are not likely to voice out to overturn Roe v. Wade again, should it be successful in our side, which it will be successful, I think the judges would opt into the more safer option, for example, on determining, why Roe v. Wade is going to be applicable. But lastly, conservatives are likely to hate us anyway in both sides. Hatred or opposition is not quantifiable, and therefore we don't understand how they will to hate us even more. They're not important. Gray area people are important. Let's analyze gray area people and how they will react. Thousands of people in Glastonbury joined Olivia Rodrigo and Lily Allen in singing "Fuck You" while naming the 5 chief judges. Not every one of them are feminists, but they still chant anyway. Because the issue of pro-choice is not only seen as a feminist agenda, but also a fundamental right that needs to be defended. In government, you exactly, make a setback from all the particular lawsuits and all the progresses that you have made to begin with. Since you pull back all the efforts, you choose to go the safe way. We say we draw another card, hope to get the blackjack. We're so proud of it.
Right, thank you for that speech. Now to close the case of closing government, call upon Governor Webb here.
Can I go to the toilet a minute? Just a minute, that'll be quick.
Okay.
Yoi Truche, guys. Okay, sir. I just want to mention before that my speech might be going to be have a trigger warning because we're talking about women's autonomy. Yeah. So just start my speech. 3, 2, 1. Totally agree with right when they're talking about how this abortions law and any abortions any law that actually or any policy pertaining to the abortion is actually very dangerous, right? But when they said that it will be a very strong legal basis and also very dangerous, and then like their model or their solutions of fancy is actually focusing on the ruling to be evaluated the law, right? We understand like how policies is actually very dangerous, but how is that the parameters of oppositions policy will that they actually have the visibility to pass the bill, right? Campaigning through the social media and like the masses, like we don't think so it's very generic, right? We think that's not enough because the core of the problem is actually the people inside of the government, as Chris already told you. And unfortunately, the majority of people in the governments and the policymakers are actually evangelical Christians. No explanation as how they will counter this or face this evangelical Christians, nor that actually came from CO, right? So you can't just assume that everyone is damn liberals. The ELO also talking about like the visibility is garnering male allies to support the bills. It's not that effective as well, right? Because like we have enough men who actually supporting the right of women, but what we don't have, or like but if you like still want to garner more mail, it's very hard, especially if you want to persuade a crackhead like Ben Shapiro, right? So you just can't just like so you should just garnering a like your movement as a whole and center the like and center it to persuade the jurors, as Chris already mentioned as well. As the time goes by, you will have actually the time to develop the policy, right? The time we will legalize this policy, you will have actually my mention to in the future to develop this policy and this law to actually embrace more minorities who own a variance. And the next response is that towards the like how the like the house the women who always actually like still want to do abortions post 15 weeks, right? The women in the south in the right areas, like two response, right? The first is that the women who want to do abortion post 15 weeks already embrace actually in the status quo by the illegal clinics that have the funding of such a bigger companies like Uber, for instance, from the movement and progressive society. This policy will help this kind of NGO to help women. At least they will still operate even though this policy is actually already legalized, right? This type of policy is actually the term is maybe like hands up plus, right? So we'll help the like actually like the lacking policy from the governments. But the majority of the abortion cases are before 15 weeks. We are embracing most of the vulnerable actor here, noticing that your policy is harder to pass the bill, so you have the bigger likelihood to actually fail this bill, and it will be very costly for you in the future if like every woman's regardless of their age of the age of their pregnancy is actually will face this kind of like anti-abortion law, right? So yeah, like our policy is like have a more higher likelihood for actually to pass the bill. But like talking about like how we'll compare it to OG, like they're talking about like their perspective, like OJ is afraid of the perception of the people as like labeling as a radical persons, like but CG here framing the debate and like explaining is actually the debate how this policy will work and under our mechanisms. He also told you that how to protect women who needs abortions, what kind of law is actually passed in the best and also like the fastest. Don't be delusional. It's not focused on the perception of the people. Yeah, like we care about women. That's what actually feminism. Why then this method is very effective. The middle states like Missouri, Alabama might be very conservative, but exactly that's actually their weakness, right? These states are full of people who have the value of family, the states where people value women as weak, hence like bringing them a story of a family pain, they will vote for you. That's why Alabama is it's actually full of uncriminalized rapists and also incels. Because of the story of the family pain, right? And as a feminist, screw the idea of principle. Women need our help to at least give them the better world instead of like the unreal utopia, right? Utilize the conservative mindset of these people to actually pass the bill. If we can't pass full legal abortion, at least give less punishment for women who abort. Maybe like instead of like prison, women who abort are given fine or like monetary punishment that the feminist organization can collect funds and help them, or maybe like allowing abortion before 15 weeks because like then feminists could actually help and giving women quick pregnancy tests and assist pregnant ladies to make quick decisions whether to abort or not, right? So last strict law might sound not enough for oppositions, but this is good actually enough, because if the law is less strict, it enables feminists to assist more pregnant women who are being discriminated by law. And this is the most realistic mechanism that both opening debates misses. So we win. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now to call upon the last speaker of this debate, call upon the opposition hearing.
Hello, am I audible?
You are.
Okay, if anyone wants to POI, please do so through the chat. I'm going to be taking one from OG, if not from CG. And before I begin my speech, there's a trigger warning. If I say something that's insensitive, I did not mean any harm. All the things that I'm saying in my speech is only for the purposes of this debate. Thank you. I'm going to begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. 3 things I'm going to talk about. Firstly, I'm going to talk about CG, secondly, OG, and then I'm going to compare our case with OO, and then I'm going to further extend my Justin's case, right? Firstly, let's talk about CG. I think that CG is automatically out of this debate because they have a different conception of what the Supreme Court is actually looking like, right? Their entire argument from member is that, oh, we want to tell stories to juries and we want to bring them to our side by telling you about this poor little girl that want to have an abortion, for example. This is true if the Supreme Court is ruled by juries. It's not, ladies and gentlemen. It's ruled by 9 solely and absolutely ruling justices, ladies and gentlemen, that do not care about sob stories because they are literally put there by presidents of the past to make sure that the ruling of the United States law is consistent with other constitutions, for example. So the only thing that they care about in this court is not that they say stories, but the law in and of itself. So CG is automatically out because they have a different mechanism than the entire rest of the team, right? OG is also out because when they brought you a principal argument about how we do not want to be seen as radicalized, for example, we do not want to be seen as someone that's crazy, for example, this principle is literally backlashing the entire feminism idea because in the past, when we wanted women to vote, for example, and women suffrage, that was also seen as radical. When we want women more freedom, for example, that was also seen as radical by the conservative movement, for example, is environment. So what I mean here is the feminist movement since the very beginning of its conception have always tried to fight for the radical ideas that we want against the patriarchy, for example, is environment, and against conservative ideals. I do not see why idealism of abortion should be stopped in comparison to other things in the past. Right? It also negates the argument how we also fail the predecessors of the past. I think OG fails the predecessor of the past because you're literally backstabbing the entire effort of your predecessor to actually provide abortion and constitutional abortion for all women in the US, for example, right? Secondly, about criminalization, right? I don't get this thing about criminalization because you're not going to be jailed just because you want to overturn Roe v. Wade, for example, maybe if you want to make an illegal clinic, you'll be jailed, but when you just go out and demo, for example, you're not going to be jailed, for example, right? And secondly, notice that under your side of the house, you're also going to be fighting for other feminist ideals other than abortions. You're also going to fight for women's rights, maternal leave, for example, and that conservative states also don't want. So you're also going to be seen as radicals anyway under the side on the virtue that you're also going to be fighting for other women's rights other than abortion, right? So in that regard, OG also is also out. So now let's talk about what we brought to you in this debate and how does it compare to opening opposition. Because we think that opening opposition did a quite good job telling you why this particular importance of like overruling Roe v. Wade, for example, and why Roe v. Wade is actually really, really bad for all women in the US, but how state, etc., is not necessarily like stable. Sometimes there are swing states, etc., and there are which all true. However, I think that they've also never really managed to prove to you the likelihood as to why most likely you can overrule the overruling of Roe v. Wade, right? Because it's important because if they do not have any alternative to the harm at all, basically their case also falls. I know that the LO and the LO have tried to tell you about how this can create mounting public pressure, for example, and then the LO tried to tell you about how how the United States is actually a democracy, for example. But I do not think that this is quite relevant, right? Because I think that what every single team missed in this debate is that Supreme Court is not reliant on politics. Why? Because they are literally chosen there for life, ladies and gentlemen, right? So no matter what you do, most likely if you go up against Supreme Court gates and like knock on the door, most likely you're not going to do anything because they're literally still going to pick their jobs. So there needs to be an analysis as to how the inner workings of the court works in and of itself before any of the benefit for opposition can actually run. How do we prove it under closing opposition then? 2 things. Number 1, the 5v4 ruling, and most likely when we pressure the internal orders of the court, the justices will most likely change. And secondly, why legal argumentation is better than the discussion of science that OG and CG wanted to bring, right? Firstly, the 5-4 decision ruling, right? I think think Justin already told you a quite important point that has never been responded by government with, right? Justin told you that the current decision is extremely tight, for example, right? It's a 5-4 ruling, meaning that there's a highly chance if we actually get one of those five justices to actually vote for the more liberal side in the next, for example, case in the case session, for example, we can actually overturn this, for example, right? Meaning that there is a high likelihood there rather than the evangelical and conservative state politicians that exist in Texas, Alabama, whatsoever, right? Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, these justices are more likely to change because they are not influenced by politics, right? Yes, they may have been chosen by conservative presidents in the past, but notice because they are actually in there for life. Even if they pander to like conservative or if they pander to liberal, for example, most likely this is not going to be something that actually this actually changes their perception, for example. So the idea of like God law or the idea this is a mandate from God, for example, is less likely to affect them, meaning that they are only going to focus on the law, for example, right? Thirdly, though, we think that, as I said to you, right, when we actually fight for the law itself, most likely what we're going to do is, and then when there's a local court or where there's a lower court, for example, that has an abortion case, for example, in regard to illegal abortion, and that case is actually brought to the appeals court, and the appeals court deny the case, and it's brought to the Supreme Court, for example, most likely the federal is going to hire this court and highlight this particular case to actually being brought by the Supreme Court, for example, because most likely in the future, ladies and gentlemen, there's going to be massive amounts of cases where women are actually getting illegal abortions because they cannot leave their state or whatsoever, meaning that most likely the Supreme Court is going to be flooded with appeals cases, for example, that they have the obligation to check out. Why? Because the Supreme Court's obligation inherently is to make sure, or is to analyze and to see the courts that actually deals with the constitutionality of the United States itself, meaning all abortion cases in the Court of Appeals and the District Court must be brought to the Supreme Court, for example, meaning the Supreme Court are going to be flooded with these cases, for example, meaning there's more chances for you to cassation or appeal in the future, for example, right? But why is the cassation and appeal is going to be better under outside? Exactly because legal argumentation, right? The opening government and closing government brought to you about how, we want to have scientific discussion, for example, be asked. Why? Most likely conservative politicians do not actually care about scientific explanation because they think that this is something of a gut will, for example, right? And you cannot necessarily oppose God, for example, so most likely they're just going to stick with the conservative ideology, and no amount of scientific drugs are actually going to deter them, right? And the outside is going to be different. Why? Because judges are accountable by the legal opinion after the decision, right? Notice after the Supreme Court decision of Roe v. Wade, every single justice have to make a legal opinion as to why they do that. They have to refer to legislative history, for example. They have to refer to previous case law, for example, right? Meaning that the legal discussion can actually happen outside the house because they're not influenced as something as absolute by God, but the actual debatable law and the Constitution and the legislative history of the US itself. This is way more attainable for us to change their minds because legal arguments can actually change the justice and justice's mind, for example, because it's not an absolute right. There's different interpretation. I mean, there's more likelihood for us to actually change all these things to begin at least, right? But even if we fail, right? I think that even if we fail, the point here is, in principle, we actually fight for what woman wants at the end of the day, which is to make sure that abortion is a constitutional right that every woman can enjoy, and not only some states may enjoy, for example, and because we have a high likelihood of chances to do that under our side, which is only proven under CO, we believe that we win this debate. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that debate. That marks the end of the debate. Thank you, everyone. You guys, I think, can wait here. As for the judges, can the organizing committee give us breaking rooms maybe, so that we can deliberate? And good luck with the result later. Thank you.
even wrote down the day that I fell for you. Now it's crossed out in red, but I still can't forget if I wanted to. And it drives me insane, think I'm hearing your name everywhere I go. But it's all in my head, it's just all in my head. But you won't see me break, call you up in 3 days, I'll send you a bouquet, saying it's a mistake, drink my troubles away, one more glass of champagne, and you know I'm the first to say that I'm not perfect, and you're the first to say you want the best thing, but now I know a perfect way to let you go. Give my last hello, hope it's worth it. Here's your perfect. My best was just fine. How I tried to be great for you. I'm flawed by design, and you love to remind me no matter what I do. But you won't see me break, call you up in 3 days, I'll send you a bouquet, saying it's a mistake. I'm trying to put you in the worst mood. P1 cleaner than your church shoes. Really point to just to hurt you. All red lamb just to tease you. None of these toys on lease to. Made your whole year in a week too. Yeah, main bitch out of your league too. Side bitch out of your league too. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks a table come from ebony. Cut that ever into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man. I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see a shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. Switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Every day a nigga try to test me, every day a nigga try to end me, pull off in that roadster SV, pockets overweight getting hefty, coming for the king, that's a far cry. I come alive in the fall time, the competition, I don't really listen. I'm in the blue moon, song bumping new edition. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks a table come from ebony. Cut that ever into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man. I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see a shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. Switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Let a nigga Brad Pitt, legend of the fall, took the year like a bandit. Bought mama a crib and a brand new wagon. Now she hit the grocery shop looking lavish. Star Trek roof in the Wraith the Con. Girls get loose when they hear the song. 100 on the dash, get me close to God. We don't pray for love, we just pray for cause. House so empty, need a centerpiece. 20 racks a table come from ebony. Cut that ever into skinny pieces. Then she clean up with her face, man. I love my baby. You talking money, need a hearing aid. You talking about me, I don't see the shade. Switch on my side, I take any lane. Switch on my core if I kill any pain. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you done. I'm a motherfucking star boy. Look what you It's the thought of being young when your heart's just like a drum, beating louder with nowhere to guard it. When it all seems like it's wrong, sing along to Elton John and to that feeling we're just getting started. When the nights get colder and the rhythm's got you falling behind, just dream about that moment when you look yourself right in the eye. And you say, I wanna dance, the music's got me going, and nothing that can stop how we move. Yeah, let's make a place and live just like we're golden and rolling like we're dancing fools. We don't need to worry, 'cause when we fall we know how to land. Don't need to talk the talk, just walk the walk tonight. 'Cause we don't need permission to dance. There's always something that's standing in the way, but if you don't let it phase you, you know just how to break just with the right vibe, yeah. 'Cause there's no looking back. There ain't no one to prove we don't got this on lock, yeah. The wait is over. The time is not, so let's do it right. Yeah, we keep going and stay up until we see the sunrise. And we say, I wanna dance, the music's got me going, and nothing that can stop how we move. Yeah, let's break our plans and leave just like we're golden and rolling like we're dancing fools. We don't need to worry, 'cause when we fall we know how to land. Don't need to talk the talk, just walk the walk tonight. 'Cause we don't need permission to dance. Da-da-da-da-da-da. 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 We don't need permission to dance. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, let me show you that we can keep the fire alive. 'Cause it's not over till the summer. Say one more time. Say, I wanna dance, the music's got me going, nothing that can stop how we move. Yeah, let's break our plans and live just like we're golden and rolling like we're dancing fools. Like we're dancing fools. We don't need to worry, 'cause when we fall we know how to land. Don't need to talk the talk, just walk the walk tonight. 'Cause we don't need permission to dance. Smooth like butter, like a criminal undercover. Don't pop like trouble, breaking into your heart like that. Cool shade stunner, yeah, owe it all to my mother. High like summer, yeah, I'm making you sweat like that. Break it down. Ooh, when I look in the mirror, I'm not too hard to do. I got the superstar glow, so ooh, to the boogie line. A side step right left to my beat. I like the moon rock with me, baby. Know that I got that heat. Let me show you 'cause cock is cheap. Side step right left to my beat. the night sky. Got the right body and the right mind. Rolling up the party, got the right vibes. Move like haters. Fresh boy, pull up and we lay low. All the players get moving with the bass low. Got the army right behind us when we say so. Let's go. Side step right left to my beat. I like the moon right with me, baby. You know that I got the heat. Let me show you 'cause talk is cheap. Side step right left to my beat. Get it, let it roll. Cool light, cool shade, and you know we don't stop. Highlight, ain't no. You been like, oh my God. We gon' make it rock in his head. We gon' make it bounce in his head. Hotter, sweeter, cooler, butter. Get it, let it roll. Memories follow me left and right. I can feel you over here. I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do now? Ever since the day you went away, no, I don't know how to erase your body from out my brain. What you gonna do now? Maybe I should just focus on me instead. All I think about are the nights we were tangled up in your bed. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. You're going round in circles, got you stuck up in my head. Yeah, memories follow me left and right. I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. Your love stays with me day and night. I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do now? Ever since the day you went away, someone tell me how much more do I gotta drink for the pain? What you gonna do now? You did things to me that I just can't forget. Think about all the nights we were tangled up in your bed. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. You're going round in circles, got you stuck up in my head. Yeah, memories follow me left and right. I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. Your love stays with me day and night. I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do now? Did you know you're the one that got away? And even though, baby, I'm still not okay. Did you know that my dreams, they're all the same? Every time I close my eyes, memories follow me left and right. I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do? Your love stays with me day and night. I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do now? I can feel you over here, I can feel you over here. You take up every corner of my mind. What you gonna do now?
Hope the wound heals, but it never does. That's 'cause you at war with love. You at war with love.
These
Yeah.
battle scars don't look like they're fading. Don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Never let a wound ruin me. But I feel like ruins wooing me. Arrow holes that never close from Cupid on a shooting spree. Feeling stupid 'cause I know it ain't no you and me. But when you're trying to beat the odds up and trying to keep your nods up, and you know that you should know and let it go, but the fear of the unknown, hone another lover's phone sends you back into the zone. With no Tom Hanks to bring you home, a lover not a fighter on the front line with a poem. Trying to write yourself a rifle, maybe sharpen up a song to fight the tanks and drones of you being
I
alone.
wish I never looked, I wish I never touched. I wish that I could stop loving you so much. 'Cause I'm the only one that's trying to keep us together.
Yeah.
When all of the signs say that I should forget her. I wish you were the best I ever had. I wish that the good outweighed the bad. 'Cause
Yeah.
it'll never be over.
It'll never be over.
Until you tell me it's over.
Until you tell me
These
it's over.
battles
Yeah.
don't look like they're fading.
Now you're down on the ground screaming medic. The only thing that comes is the post-traumatic stresses. Shields, body armors, and vests don't properly work. That's why you're in a locker full of hurt. The enemy within and all the fires from your friends. The best medicines to probably just let it win.
Wish I couldn't feel, wish I couldn't love. I wish that I could stop cause it hurts so much. And I'm the only one that's trying to keep us together. When all of the signs say that I should forget her. I wish you were the best I ever had. I wish that the good outweighed the bad. Cause it'll never be over.
Can never be over.
Until you tell me it's over.
Until you tell me it's over.
Battle scars don't look like they're fading. Don't look like they're ever going away. They ain't ever gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading. Don't look like they're ever going away. They ain't ever gonna change. These battles. Could you set me on fire? I never felt so alive, yeah.
Now, hoping wounds heal, but it never does. That's because you at war with love.
And I'm at the point of breaking, and it's impossible to shake it.
See, you hope the wound heals, but it never does. That's cause you at war with love. Hope it heals, but it never does. That's cause you at war with love. Yeah.
Ever gone away?
Never.
Ever gonna change?
Never.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading. Don't look like they're ever gone away.
Never.
They ain't never gonna change.
Never.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading. Don't look like they're ever gone away. I ain't ever gonna change these battles.
What up, world? It's your boy, just one of the guys down here. Well, I could be more specific. I'm a human, and just wanted to, for the sake of all of us Earthlings out there, just wanted to say. We love the Earth, it is our planet. We love the Earth, it is our home. We love the Earth, it is our planet. We love the Earth, it is our home.
Hi, I'm a baboon. I'm like a man, just less advanced, and my anus is huge.
Hey, I'm a zebra. No one knows what I do, but I look pretty cool. Am I white or black?
I'm a lion cub, and I'm always getting licked.
How's it going? I'm a cow. You drink milk from my tits. I'm a fat fucking pig.
I'm a common fungus.
I'm a disgruntled skunk. Shoot you out my butthole.
I'm a marijuana plant, I can get you fucked up.
And I'm Kanye West.
We love the Earth. It is our planet. We love the Earth. It is our home. We love the Earth. It is our planet. We love the Earth. It is our home. We love the
Ba-dum, boom, ba-dum-ba-dee. We are the vultures, feet on the dead. We're just some rhinos, funny as heck.
I'm just a giraffe once with a snack.
Hippity hop, I'm a kangaroo. Hop out there, up and down with you. I'm an elephant, I got junk in my trunk.
What the fuck? I'm a clown.
I'm a wolf,
I'm a squirrel looking for my next nut.
and I'm a pony, just a freak horse. But, come on, get on. Yeah, giddy up, let's ride.
HPV, don't let me in. I'm a koala and I sleep all the time. So what? It's cute.
We love you, India.
We love you, Africa.
We love the Chinese.
We forgive you, Germany. It is our planet. We love the Earth. It is our home. We love the Earth.
I've trudged the earth for so damn long and still don't know shit's going on. I hope it's not a simulation. Give each other names like Ahmed and Pedro. And yeah, we like to wear clothes. Girls still look beautiful and it covers up our human dick. Eat a lot of tuna fish, but these days it's like we don't know how to act. All these shootings, pollution, we under attack on ourselves. Like let's all just chill, respect what we built. Like look at the internet, it's cracking as hell. Fellas, don't you let it come when you have sex. And I heard women orgasms are better than a dick's. So what we got is land for, what we gotta stand for. Love. And we love the Hey Russia, we're cool. Hey Asia, all of you, come on, every one of you, from the plains to the Sahara, let's come together and live.
Viene chicos, amamos la tierra.
Woman, I beat you. Come on, everybody. I know we're not all the same, but we're living on the same Earth.
Have you ever been to Earth?
Everyone who's listening has been to Earth, Ariana. We're not making music for aliens here.
Are we gonna die?
You know what, Bieber? We might die. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, there's so many people out there who don't think global warming's a real thing. You know, we gotta save this planet. We're being stupid.
Unless we get our shit together now.
I'ma care for you. I'ma care for you. You make it look like it's magic. Oh yeah. 'Cause I see nobody but you. I'm never confused. Hey, I'm so used to being used. So I love when you call unexpected. 'Cause I hate when the moment's expected. So I'ma care for you. I'ma care for you. Yeah. 'Cause girl, you're perfect. You're always worth it. And you deserve it. The way you work it. 'Cause girl, you earned it. Yeah. Girl, you earned it. Yeah. You know our love would be tragic. Oh yeah. So you don't pay it. No mind. We live with no lies. Hey, you're my favorite kind of night. So I love when you call unexpected. 'Cause I hate when the moment's expected. So I'ma care
take it slow, but it's not typical. He already knows that my love is fire. His heart was a stone, but then his hands rolled. I turned him to gold and it took him higher. Well, I'll be a daydream. I'll wear your favorite things. We could be beautiful. Get drunk on the good life. I'll take you to paradise.
Check. Hi everyone. Am I visible and audible? Yeah. Hello.
Yes, you are.
All right. Okay. So yeah. Hi everyone. We're reaching to the last event, that is the awarding and also the closing ceremony. So once again, representing the education core, me and Dea would like to humbly thank everyone in this competition, starting from the organizing committee and also the invited judges and the TED director, and also last but not least, all of you, the participants, for your participation in this year's Unite. Without all of your cooperation and participation, this year's competition would not be possible. And I apologize on behalf of Dea. So Dea could not attend this awarding and closing ceremony because she is on moving out and moving in process to a new place. Right. So we will start with the top 10 best speaker. I will be announcing all of the top 10 best speakers. Let's start with the 10th position. Okay, so the 10th best speaker, congratulations to Sutra Setiara from UIB with a total speaker score of 234 and standard deviation of 2.16. Yay, congratulations to Sutra. All right, 9th best speaker, congratulations to, Brian Jose from UGMA with the total score of 235 with the standard deviation of 2.49. Congratulations to Brian. Yay. Okay, next, 8th best speaker. With a total score of 236 with that standard deviation. Congratulations to Rahadi Indra Wicaksono from Telkom A. Congratulations to Indra. Okay, 7th best speaker with the same score but smaller standard deviation. Congratulations to Joshua Glorious from UIB. Congratulations. Yay. Okay, next, 6th best speaker with a total speaker score of 237 and 1.41 standard deviation. Congratulations to JPJ from Unpar. Congratulations. Okay, next, 5th best speaker with that speaker score and that standard deviation. Congratulations to Vinay from Atmabi. Congratulations to Vinay. Yay. Okay, next, 4th best speaker with the same score but smaller standard deviation. Congratulations to Sabela Clara Yandita. Okay, so congratulations to Sabela from Atmabi. Yay. Okay, 3rd best speaker, announcing with pride, even though Pride Month is already over. Congratulations to Crisantos Danu Risianto from Sadat A. Congratulations. Yay. Okay, 2nd best speaker. So the 2nd best speaker and the 1st best speaker, they are tied with the same score. The tiebreaker was on the standard deviation. So with that standard deviation, congratulations to Justin Gabriel from UIA. That means the best speaker in this competition goes to next. Okay. Frederick Roland Aristico from UIA with the same total speaker score but smaller standard deviation. So congratulations to Frederick. Okay, so that's for the top 10 best speaker. Now we are proceeding to the grand final result. So I will be representing Fahri to announce the result of the grand final. Okay, please wait for a moment. I will share the screen from my end. Oh, it's already there. Okay, so yeah. All right, so we're going to announce the result of the grand final, starting from the 3rd runner-up or the 4th rank in the grand final round. So the 3rd runner-up goes to, okay, 3, 2, 1. Congratulations from the opening government Unpar. Yeah. Okay. Next, 2nd runner-up goes to 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Congratulations to closing government Sadar A. Yay. So yeah, that means the debate went into an off-bench winning. So now we will go with the 1st runner-up. So the 1st runner-up goes to 3, 2, and 1. Congratulations to opening opposition Atmabi. Yeah, that means Okay, the champion for this year's Unite goes to closing opposition UIA. Congratulations. Okay. All right. So now for the final best speaker, next one. Yeah, so for UIA, feel free to share the spotlight because Frederick got the overall best speaker. Justin, you got the final best speaker. So for Justin Gabriel, congratulations. Yay. Okay, yeah, so basically that marks the end of the top 10 best speaker and also the winner announcement. Once again, congratulations everyone for making it this far. Congratulations everyone for finishing this year's Unite. Thank you very, very much for your participation. So representing the Education Corps, we would like to sign off and we'll see you in next year's Unite. Okay, bye-bye everyone.
Kuatinya diam aja.
All right, thank you so much, Kajia, for the presentation. And I want to say congratulations all the winners. Congratulations for your outstanding achievement. You really deserve every bit of it. All the best wishes to you. Okay, let's give the warmest applause to all participants of Unite 2020. Okay, to all the teams who haven't got the chance to be the winner, we truly appreciate your hard work and effort for this event. We would like to thank you for your participation, and I hope we can meet again in another opportunity. All right, everyone, to create a memory of Unite 2022, we'll have a documentation session. So for all participants, please, we hope that you can turn on your camera for documentation if you consent so. Okay. Please, for the committee to lead the documentation session, please. Thank you.
Kuatinya diam aja. Kuatinya diam aja.
Okay, thank you so much for all participants that coming back to this room. So we are here to have a documentation session. So please, if you consent so, you can turn on your camera because we will have a documentation session first. Okay, since we will have a documentation session, please for all participants that is joining in this room, you can turn on your camera because we'll have a documentation session. Okay, thank you so much for Sabella and Vinay. We really hope that for another participants can turn on the camera. Okay, I will start to count from 3 to 1 for this documentation. Okay, 3, 2, 1, pause. Okay, the second slide. 3, 2, 1, pause. Okay, thank you so much for all participants that is attending in this Zoom. So guys, before we end in this debate competition, UNY debate competition 2022, me representing all the committees would like to thanks for our sponsorship and media partners who have supported us in this event. We would like to thanks Emina, Atmos Konveksi, BEM FVP UNY, BEM FE UNY, eventhunter.id, Radio Istakalisa Jogja, Gudang Lomba IND, Sputar.info ID, Media Selaras, Sri Kandi Debat, and last but not least, we want to say thanks to MediaEvent.com. Thank you very much for your continued support throughout this event. Also, I hope you can learn something new and useful throughout this event. Me as the MC representing all the committee would like to give our most gratitude to all of you. I'm Nur Wahyudi signing out. Goodbye and see you at UNY English Debate Competition 2023.
Thank you so much, guys. See you next year.
Recording stopped.